Lenore?
Bryan.
It's Saturday, 2 o'clock. From you, so I guess you probably found somebody.
Hello, Bryan.
I was just leaving you.
He's got moves, you know.
Apparently not.
All those killed were Marines.
The film begins with a somber funeral in Albania, where the mafia gathers to mourn Marco, the son of their powerful boss, Murad. In his grief, Murad reflects on the brutal loss of his son at the hands of an American assassin and vows to exact revenge, plotting to lure the killer to Albania and avenge Marco's death on their homeland. Meanwhile, we shift to Bryan Mills, a former CIA Black Ops operative, as he arrives at his ex-wife Lenore's home to take their daughter, Kim, for driving lessons. After some hesitation, Lenore reluctantly reveals that Kim has a boyfriend, shocking Bryan and sending his heart racing. He had no idea she was dating. Though Lenore reassures him that Kim is fine, Bryan's protective instincts kick in. Lenore, now separated and feeling lonely, asks Bryan not to track Kim's new relationship, to which he agrees. At the same time, Kim is at a park with her boyfriend Jamie, who is eager to take their relationship to the next level, but Kim isn't ready for that kind of commitment. Just then, Bryan shows up unexpectedly at the park, and the tension is palpable. If looks could kill, Jamie would be in serious trouble. Kim is taken aback by her father's sudden appearance and hurriedly gets into the car, feeling embarrassed. As they drive, Kim expresses her frustration over his intrusion and questions how he found her. Bryan explains that he installed a tracker on her phone, a decision born from his concern for her safety, especially given her history of abduction in previous situations. Although Kim is annoyed, she understands her father's intentions but longs for autonomy and normalcy. She pleads with him not to run a background check on Jamie, and while he agrees verbally, he slyly contacts his friend Sam to conduct one anyway. The narrative then shifts to corrupt French officer Pitterel, who arrives at his office only to be ambushed by Suko, a henchman of Murad. Suko interrogates Pitterel about Bryan Mills' whereabouts, revealing that Pitterel's business card was found at Marco's murder scene. Despite Pitterel's claims of ignorance, Suko resorts to violence, stabbing him in the leg with scissors in a desperate attempt to extract information. The following day, Bryan visits Lenore's house and finds her in tears. She confides in him about a family trip that her husband had cancelled, an effort to mend their relationship. Moved by her plight, Bryan extends an invitation for her to join him on a 3-day security job in Istanbul, offering her a chance to escape her current troubles. Bryan arrives in Istanbul, spending time with friends who teasingly mock his relationship with his ex-wife, joking that he could easily rekindle their romance. Meanwhile, in a parallel scene, Marco's henchman is seen bribing a Turkish official, who divulges Bryan's whereabouts. Unexpectedly, Kim and Lenore arrive to surprise Bryan, and he welcomes them to his hotel room. Later that evening, while Lenore opts for rest, Kim persuades Bryan to explore the city together. After visiting a club, they enjoy a serene ferry ride where Bryan inquires about Jamie and whether Kim feels love. Kim hesitates, admitting she doesn't experience the same feelings her mother described when she first met Bryan. The following morning, Murad arrives in Istanbul with a convoy, meeting with Suko, who confirms that everything is set in motion. Murad heads to a safe house and contacts his operative, who is surveilling Bryan as he leaves the hotel. In the lobby, Bryan reunites with Lenore and Kim, but Kim decides to stay behind and unwind at the pool. Unbeknownst to them, Murad instructs his men to capture all 3 of them after learning Kim is still at the hotel. As Bryan and Lenore ride in a private cab, they engage in a heartfelt conversation about their family and what might have been. Suddenly, Bryan notices a car trailing them and instructs his driver to veer into a busy street to shake off their pursuers. He quickly devises a plan, urging Lenore to return to the hotel and find Kim. After dropping her off, Bryan takes control of the situation by commandeering the vehicle, signaling to the men that he is aware of their intentions. Murad gives his men the order to pursue Bryan through the bustling streets as he attempts to warn Kim, who remains oblivious while enjoying her time at the pool. The mafia corners Bryan and opens fire, causing his car to crash. However, they soon realize he has vanished. On foot now, Bryan makes a desperate escape but is soon confronted by 2 attackers, whom he swiftly neutralizes. Just as he overcomes 2 more assailants with ease, Suko appears, gun drawn and aimed at Lenore's head, forcing Bryan to surrender. In a tense moment, Bryan manages to call Kim, finally reaching her. He urgently warns her about the imminent danger and instructs her on where to hide. In a heartbreaking decision, he drops his weapon and is brutally beaten by the men before both he and Lenore are taken captive. With a hood shrouding his face, Bryan begins to count the seconds, meticulously noting every turn, sound, and scent that surrounds him. Meanwhile, Murat's men violently burst into Kim's room, only to find it deserted. In a panic, she races to her father's room for safety, but the door is locked, forcing her to scale the outside ledge. The relentless men pursue her, climbing the ledge in their desperate quest to capture her. Just as they enter the room and begin their search, Kim finds refuge in a closet. They come perilously close to discovering her hiding place, but their attention is diverted when they are compelled to open fire on security guards, triggering an alarm that sends them fleeing. Bryan and Lenore are transported to an abandoned warehouse, where he is bound and left alone. Seizing an opportunity, he discreetly retrieves a mini cell phone hidden in his socks and attempts to call Sam, but only reaches voicemail. In a moment of desperation, he calls Kim, who remains concealed in the closet. He urges her to head to the U.S. Embassy, but she refuses to abandon them and pleads for guidance on how to help. Reluctantly, Bryan instructs her to retrieve a case from the closet and open it to find a map. As they navigate through the chaos, he guides her on how to pinpoint his location. When that proves ineffective, he tells her to take a grenade and throw it at a safe spot. Kim follows his instructions, and the grenade detonates with a thunderous explosion. Bryan counts the seconds until he hears it, using the sound and the wind's direction to further narrow down his location. He instructs her to grab a gun and 2 more grenades before moving closer. Just as he begins to share more details, he hears footsteps approaching his cell and has to end the call abruptly. Suko enters and unleashes a brutal assault on Bryan before Murad steps forward, eager for revenge. He taunts Bryan with photographs of all the men he has killed, culminating in an image of Marco. Bryan reminds Murad that Marco was responsible for kidnapping his daughter, but Murad remains unfazed. He then orders his men to bring Lenore into the room, where they inflict a small cut on her neck and tie her upside down. They intend for Bryan to witness the blood rush to her head while plotting to abduct Kim and sell her off. Once Murad and his men leave, Bryan desperately begins working on his restraints in a frantic bid to save Lenore. After a tense struggle, he finally breaks free from his bindings and rushes toward her. Meanwhile, Kim has taken a cab to one of the locations marked on the map, close to where Bryan is being held captive. She manages to reconnect with him and follows his instructions to set off another grenade, which he hears echoing in the distance. He tells her to continue heading east. In a desperate bid for escape, he manages to break one of the heating pipes, instructing her to look for the steam rising from the roofs above. Spotting it, she quickly reaches the chimney and drops the gun down, just as Murad's men begin their pursuit. Bryan seizes the weapon at the last moment as guards come to investigate, swiftly eliminating both threats. With Lenore's safety in mind, he ascends to the upper levels, confronting and dispatching all the men in the room. Rushing up to the rooftops, he spots Kim being relentlessly chased. She skillfully evades her pursuers until she is cornered by one man. In a heartbeat, Bryan intervenes, eliminating the threat before he can harm her. They make a hasty escape in a cab, and Bryan urges Kim to wait 5 minutes before heading to the U.S. Embassy, whether or not they make it back together. Determined, Bryan enters the building only to find Lenore missing. She has been captured and is being dragged away by Murad's men. Outside, Kim notices police arriving and rushing inside. Bryan sprints after Lenore but arrives too late, witnessing her being forced into a van. He races back to Kim, where he is forced to shoot a cop who is conversing with Murad, allowing them to flee. As they speed away, the police give chase, and Kim begins to panic. With no option but to drive, she receives an impromptu crash course in high-pressure driving while Bryan returns fire at their attackers. Gathering her resolve, she executes a daring maneuver that allows Bryan to shoot one of the pursuing drivers. They reach a train line just as an oncoming train approaches. Without hesitation, Kim floors the accelerator, speeding past and sending their attackers into a deadly collision. Finally arriving at the embassy checkpoint, Bryan urges her not to stop despite the barrage of gunfire and bursts through the gates, skidding to a halt on embassy grounds. He confesses to Kim that Lenore has been taken but insists that he must rescue her to end this nightmare once and for all. He retraces his steps back to the location of their initial kidnapping, searching for any clues that might lead him to her. Meanwhile, Lenore finds herself trapped in a dark room when Murad confronts her, taunting her about Bryan's perceived cowardice for prioritizing Kim's safety over hers. Yet Lenore remains resolute, caring only for Kim's well-being. Infuriated by her defiance, Murad decides to inflict torture upon her, revealing his sinister tools as he prepares to enact his cruel intentions. Bryan begins to piece together the fragmented memories of his abduction, carefully attuning himself to every sound and scent that might guide him. He arrives at a location where he spots a man who exudes the aura of a gangster. Stealthily, he enters the yard and swiftly eliminates the man, then moves inside the building, incapacitating another guard in silence. Now armed with an AK-47, Bryan hears voices nearby and instinctively turns the weapon on one of the men, inadvertently alerting Murad, who orders his men to take Lenore away. Fueled by determination, Bryan fights his way through the building, meticulously checking each room while narrowly dodging a hail of gunfire. A few men attempt to corner him, but he dispatches them with lethal efficiency. One man tries to stall his progress, but Bryan ultimately overpowers him in a fierce struggle. With urgency, he races after Murad, who has taken Lenore through the streets and into another building. Inside, Bryan searches relentlessly until he finds Lenore lying unconscious on the floor. Just then, Suko emerges, and a fierce confrontation ensues. The two engage in an intense battle, each trying to outmaneuver the other. Suko brandishes a blade, cutting Bryan before managing to knock him down. As Suko prepares to deliver a fatal blow, Bryan seizes the moment, tripping him and sending him crashing to the ground, his death surprisingly anticlimactic. Securing Suko's weapon, Bryan rushes to Lenore, finding her alive but weak. He takes one of the fallen men's phones and dials Murad's number, hearing it ring ominously in the distance. He tracks Murad down to a corner where the man cowers in fear. Bryan offers him a chance to abandon his quest for revenge, warning that he will be forced to kill Murad's sons if they come seeking vengeance for their father's death. Reluctantly, Marco agrees, but as Bryan turns to leave, Murad attempts to shoot him, only to discover that his gun is empty. Disappointed by Murad's cowardice, Bryan turns back and executes him without hesitation. Afterward, he returns to Lenore, who asks about Kim. Relieved to learn that Kim is safe, Bryan feels a weight lift off his shoulders. A few weeks later, he watches proudly as Kim takes her driving test, passing with flying colors. To celebrate this milestone, they head out for dinner at a restaurant. Jamie joins them, and while Bryan laughs and enjoys the moment, it's clear that beneath his jovial exterior lies a lingering pain from their harrowing experiences. Thank you for watching. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe for more recaps. Until next time, have a nice day.